Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media, where we still are amazing Trump tweet decoders. And I haven't seen anyone yet, Thomas, who can beat me. Although I will say this, the conservative treehouse is doing an excellent job picking up the tweets and writing up articles on them. This last few days, we haven't been able to get to the tweets, so it's nice to know we've got somebody covering our back.
And the point of our decoding of the tweets is to show what he isn't saying. The other people who are using these now as really the stream of news, they simply take his tweets and then they put them up there and then they discuss them. You know, they're discussing what's overt. We're discussing what is also covert.
Well, you're a sophisticated former NSA cryptologist, so we expect more from you, Thomas.
Well, certainly I'm not sophisticated, but
that is true.
But certainly I had fun in the NSA for 3 years, and you know, basically what we're just trying to do is make sure that you understand that Trump understands that he is creating the news. He understands that his tweets are the news. They're the international news. They're the news that literally took down the G7 before it even started, and then they tried to tweet against him. That was hysterical, seeing Trudeau trying to tweet back against Trump before the meeting even started.
Doesn't he understand he's a master tweeter?
Yeah, Matt, he made him look like a complete idiot, especially...
Is that why the eyebrows fell off?
Yeah, the eyebrows fell off because everything about him is fake. Even the hair. Notice the hair is always in an exact position, a little bit messed up. Is that real? I don't even know if that's real hair.
Are we going to get to the tweets?
The point is this soy boy tried to tweet against the master tweeter, and he just got taken down before. And then in the meeting, he's like, oh, everything's so nice. I'm putting on this meeting. In the worst place I have ever seen, they had one little teensy tiny table. Did you see the tiny table that they were working around? And Trump's sitting there, and here's...
Who hasn't seen that picture?
Angela Merkel.
Yeah.
Okay, that is absurd. That was the table where they were negotiating around. Trudeau, you need to go back to whatever rock you crawled out from underneath, because noticed what you put up on Truth News Headlines is him being asked questions about whether there's a surplus or about trade. He didn't know whether they have a surplus. He didn't know what a surplus is. He doesn't know what trade is. He doesn't know what a tariff is. He doesn't know anything. He is a complete imbecile. And he proved it over and over every time he opened his mouth.
Yes, okay.
And every time he tweeted.
Yes, okay. And we're going to start on the tweets of June 10th. Again, if you want to follow along, go into the description box where I have everything located in one nice little URL. This is a retweet, and it's a picture of Prime Minister of Italy along with Trump. You have anything to say about that? I have the picture in the article link.
Italy became, they were wearing MAGA hats, okay? Italy has now turned towards complete Trumpism. And as we told you from the beginning, he's not a Republican. Trump is not a Republican. He is a Trumpite.
I did it my way.
And he is a new type of movement that is beyond being political, because politics is always at least a bipolar, a dichotomy, or so spread out that, you know, there's so many choices that all of them are watered down. So what's happening in Italy is tremendous. They've actually now began turning back the George Soros boats. George Soros pays for all of those boats that I know of, that I've ever seen, that I've looked at, because there won't be a single marking on a single one of those boats bringing in one of the refugees to Italy. Check that out, folks. Why are there no markings on any of the ships bringing these refugees in? That's because they're all criminal enterprises, and George Soros is paying for it. Now, what we're about to tell you, we told you before.
They're called invader ships. We're changing the name now.
Invader ships.
Invader ships, because that's what they are. They're not refugees. Those are invaders. You just, you know, the media looks at them and calls them something else, and you believe the media. No, folks, get the media out of the way. You've got boats of illegals coming to your country in droves. That's an invasion.
It's the reverse Muslim crusades. And just like the Venetians started banking on a big scale in Venice, in Italy, as they got the boats and sent the Europeans towards Jerusalem, many times they would die from illness, or they would die from all kinds of things, but they would hold their money in the banks of Venice. That's how this all really started. Now, what we're seeing is that George Soros is the bank, and he's Venice, and he's got an anti-crusade going on. But what does he want now? He wants the European Union to pay up $60 billion a year, every year, to keep the refugees from leaving North Africa.
Isn't that what the mafia does when they go to your store and say, look, we're going to rob you every night, but if you pay us a fee, we'll protect you. So they're going to make money no matter what.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
That's what it is. You're paying a George Soros tax now, and you're going to have to pay that tax so that he stops the the reverse crusade of the Muslim invasion of Europe, which now 28 nations in the European Union all agree that in 5 years there will be no European Union because of this invasion. And George Soros is getting another Brexit vote, and he's got his troops out on the ground going house to house, and George Soros is being stood up against by Italy, Austria, Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Slovenia, and now he wants to basically tax the European Union, which is what he was probably always had as his intention to, of course, as an economic terrorist, take advantage of any of these destabilized situations and then in the end make sure that he gets his tax through a centralized European Union, as I call it, the throne of George Soros. So Italy, we congratulate you, and we love what you said. No refugees in a Soros boat. Turn around and go back. And if you can't make it all the way to North Africa, stop at Malta and drop them off there.
Oh, no. You think those Knights of Malta are going to let up refugees in their little cozy haven? No way.
No.
But that's where they need to go.
The largest charity in the world, the Knights of Malta, the Catholic Church, takes in no refugees. And so that's what we have. So Italy was making a joke when they said that. So that's how we read between the lines. There's a tremendous amount going on here. He stood with Italy because Italy is the only friend in the G7, except he'd like for Putin to come back in. And I want to say to Susan Rice, the murderous, horrible...
Can we save Susan Rice for the end?
Okay.
Okay, because I know you're going to go off on that one.
I'm going to go off on Susan Rice.
Okay, right. Let's go to the next tweet while we're in this stream. Fair trade is now to be called fool trade if it is not reciprocal. According to a Canada release, they make almost $100 billion in trade with U.S. Guess they were bragging and got caught. Minimum is $17 billion. Tax dairy from U.S. at 270%. Then Justin acts hurt when he's called out.
Well, Betsy, look at that. He can't call it fake trade. He could call it vampire trade, but he calls it fool trade, and he ain't going to be the fool no more. And that's why we elected him. He said he could do deals for us. He's done amazing deals. We don't even know how. The other day he quoted 10 trillion in effect, but it could be much, much larger than that over time. The things that he's already done, the changes and the benefits for us. So fool trade. And basically he's saying he's not going to be the fool and he's going to not let those fools take advantage of us anymore. Here's what the G7 was. It was a gang of 6 wolves eating on the carcass of America, where we didn't even get an opinion. When I heard the head of the EU, the representative there, speak, Donald Tusk.
Yes. Was
that Stalin or was that Hitler? Who was that? That was a fascist?
Yes.
How could anyone let a person who speaks like that represent... Oh, that's right. He's not an elected official now, is he? The only thing he's elected in is in the group of thieves called the European Union, who are unelected officials. So what we have here is that fool, Donald Tusk, who stood up and basically made threats that I haven't heard anything like that since George H.W. Bush threatened the world with the New World Order. He basically used the words New World Order, just twisted up. He basically threatened us.
Yes, Master.
Rise.
Okay.
He thinks he runs the world.
171 billion or 151 billion, 171 billion, something like that from the EU. That's how much we pay them. Their budgets can count on hundreds of billions of dollars from sucking the blood of American taxpayers and giving us no advantage in any fair trade agreement. Trump is right, and what he said is right. And the fact that Trudeau, who is fake in every way, from his eyebrows to his handshake to the pathetic place that he chose for having this conference, I don't even want to go into that. I don't think it could have been any more pathetic, but it shows the naivety of this person. He is nothing more than, he's like a Canadian Hollywood representative of the monarchy.
He's the Canadian version of Obama.
Yeah. He's an oligarch monarch.
He's a puppet, a cutout boy, whatever.
I'm my daddy's son, and I'm going to be a soy boy, and I'm going to stand up for the least common denominator, the far left.
We don't want to turn this into a Justin bashing session.
Well, I'm bashing him.
All right,
overtly.
because we've got so much good stuff in here. Anything more on that tweet that pops out at you?
All those people, we give them money as well as trade, and they don't give us what we want in trade. They don't take our trade, and we don't get their trade without having to pay literally extra. So what are they talking about? When Justin Trudeau tried to say, we have steel, America has, we have steel and a surplus, there's a surplus, but I could not believe that a world leader was talking about a surplus that he didn't even understand. He couldn't understand whether it was Canada or America that had the surplus on the steel.
No, I understand. And in the link, folks, I do have a copy of that video and also the one of Donald Tusk.
And the only thing he said truthfully there was the word steal. They steal from us. So it was steel, and he tried to include aluminum, and then you could see in his mind he couldn't remember whether we have a surplus or a deficit for aluminum. And so then this is the guy who wants to do a deal with Trump. Trump said he didn't really want to go to this meeting. He already tweeted out. And Trudeau and others tweeted in response in such infantile ways. They were basically saying, you are not going to stop us from stealing from you. We've been doing it a long time, and you're simply not going to stop us. That's what Donald Tusk said, essentially, if you read between the lines.
Yes,
so,
that's true. But the other thing, too, is that he is demeaning Justin in that because he's not calling him Prime Minister Trudeau. He's just calling him Justin, just like he was a young schoolboy. Because, if you look at the final tweet that we have here, this is Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. I mean, he doesn't say Lee.
And Justin acts hurt when called out.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, he got spanked. And now he's going to, divorce his parents because he got his first spanking in his life.
Okay, next tweet. Why should I, as President of the United States, allow countries to continue to make massive trade surpluses as they have for decades while our farmers, workers, and taxpayers have such a big and unfair price to pay? Not fair to the people of America. $800 billion trade deficit.
Yes, and because he's not going to sign the communique, which was, they always sign a little tiny agreement, what they can agree to. So they're agreeing that the sky is blue sometimes, and sometimes there's clouds up there. That's what they were agreeing in the communique. But no, Trump said, I'm not even signing that, you turkey butts. Why? Because you've insulted me, you've attacked me, you've lied, you've threatened me, and then you want me to give you more money from the American people's taxes? It's not going to work that way, folks. And so what we really have here is, for the first time in a long, long time, a leader in America. It's one of the most beautiful things, especially in terms of trade, because the globalism that's been going on since even before George Herbert Walker Bush, which is basically selling out to corporate internationalism, has created a deficit for us that is standard operating procedure. Basically, what we had was Obama had gotten so bad that not only did we have $800 billion in deficit, we also were giving away about $80 billion to countries through USAID. We're backing up billions in other loans and billions in what looked like charity, and billions in giving away money, and billions of the World Trade Organization, and billions of the World Bank, and billions of the International Monetary Fund. America had become the socialist teats that the rest of the world were sucking on.
Now, when you typically read about that, you may glaze over because you're reading about all of this money that's going and leaving the United States through all these programs like OPIC and USAID. But when I saw the research that was coming up from the conclave and saw the numbers myself, I was floored at how much money is leaving this country going to these corporations and banks for them, and that doesn't even help the people in the world that it says it's supposed to. So not only are we being ripped off, Americans, the people that we think it's going to, they're not getting it.
There was $5 trillion in unpaid taxes when Trump took office. A lot of that is coming back, as well as the companies are coming back and bringing back hundreds of billions of dollars in business. So if we stopped offshore theft, if we stop the corporate vampirism of our American system because they don't pay taxes, the bigger they are, and if they are corporate and they also are military, then they're ripping us off even more, to the tune of $21 trillion missing in off-book measures that we know exist.
Thomas, we wouldn't need to pay income taxes anymore if we could get this straightened out.
Oh, we have, Betsy, as you pointed out, a few ways that Americans would never have to pay income tax. They should have never had to pay to begin with. Income tax is basically saying that as long as you're a citizen, you owe for war debt. Wars that, in some cases, in our modern age, no one even declared, and yet we paid trillions and trillions of dollars in Iran and Afghanistan, in the Middle East, untold amounts of money in wars that were never declared. And so the trade deficit, this is Trump. He is going to get good deals no matter what. And so I hope all of them jump out of the G7. And I want Russia in that group. But I want the G20 to basically end. Personally, I want bilateral deals with every single nation constructed by Trump and his team. I don't want any deals to the UN. I don't want any...
Why is the UN here? We need to get them out.
We never voted for the League of Nations because everyone understood that it was nothing more than a global takeover of America by Woodrow Wilson and his group called the Inquiry, which later became the Council on Foreign Relations, which has controlled our foreign policy, i.e. war, since then. Thank you, Henry Kissinger.
I bet they could condemn that building. I bet if they went in and did an asbestos inspection, they'd find that it doesn't meet today's standards, and they could just close it down and just tell everybody, just to go away until they rebuild it. And like Obama's library, just never really get around rebuilding it. You think that's a good idea?
We can't FOIA any documents from Obama because his library is going to be in a legal suit for the next 20 years in Chicago. They chose the most valuable public piece of land to contest, and they go into a lawsuit. As we pointed out, you will not be able to FOIA Obama's records. And now, that's the news. Everybody knows it. The National Registry.
The National Archives.
And the National Archives. And all these groups are saying, oh, we can't FOIA it because we don't even know where to FOIA it. As I pointed out to you, they're not in the University of Chicago wing that he said it was going in. They're not in the magical place he's going to steal, the biggest park for the poor people and the most historic park in Chicago, which he's going to turn into basically a Disney World, an Obama Disney World. No, we're going to have basically the same thing we had before, which is the Clintons ripping everybody off, calling it's their library, the presidential library, $2 billion.
Right. Well, we were talking about the UN because that's where a lot of this corruption starts, right there in the heart of the UN. And we need to cut out our funding. We need to leave the UN. We just need to tear down the building. We need to get out. That's it. Bottom line, I don't see any compromises there.
I agree.
You ready for the next one? And add to that the fact that the U.S. pays close to the entire cost of NATO protecting many of these same countries that rip us off on trade. They pay only a fraction of the cost and laugh. The European Union had $151 billion surplus. Should pay much more for military. So we're spending all our money to provide them military. They're not anteing up, and then they're running a surplus with us.
We pay them to exist. We are the biggest line item they have, folks. U.S. is a socialist nation for the whole world, especially these people who've learned to get in early, like Britain and the European Union, and get their cut of the pie. And remember, Canada is part of the British Commonwealth. And Mexico are just a bunch of thugs. Look at our southern border. They've killed over 100 major politicians in the last year, just murdered them on the street or in their home, wherever. That's who we're dealing with, and people want to give them a trade advantage. They want to give them NAFTA. They want to invite everyone to come across the southern border and just get amnesty because that's what Bill Clinton did over and over and over again, almost in an unprecedented way. So Obama thought he could give amnesty. That's a bunch of craziness. Now, the NATO group, all the nations in NATO, and some shouldn't be in NATO, and others should be in NATO, or actually, it's going to end.
Why should
Trump is going to end it. He's going to end NATO. If he is elected a second term, there will be no NATO because NATO is a fake propaganda machine to pit the European Union and all those countries against Russia when in fact there's no need to.
But they have to do that so that they can continue to sell their war machines. It keeps the war business going. You got to keep stirring the pot, and that's what NATO does.
You have to have a clash of nations or you do not have a strong economy. And the clash of nations, that's what George Soros, that's what Henry Kissinger, the Council on Foreign Relations, is all about. Disturbing the world so that there's fighting going on at all times called a clash of nations, so that the one dominant force then stands above all of them, feeding them to make sure that the conflict goes on. We thought it was America at the top. It's not. It's Britain. And then Kissinger now says it's gone to China. So he's wrong. Kissinger's dead wrong. And so what we're going to have now is the Atlantic Council, the propaganda machine, is now being caught for their crimes. And it's going to have to end simply because of its evil nature. And they were part of affecting the American election. All the European elections, they now are working with the very groups, CrowdStrike, Dmitry Alperovich, Sean Henry, George Soros, and all of his different groups that we've named before. They're all working together to make sure that NATO stays strong and that we put missiles in Ukraine right on the border with Russia so that we keep the Cold War going until it is a hot war. And the sanctions on Russia are really stupid, the ones put on by Obama. And the new sanctions by Trump were correct because they were on specific individuals. But we could solve these problems very, very, very quickly if there wasn't the polarity between NATO and Russia, because it should not exist. And the European Union stands as the throne of George Soros and is run by this Donald Tusk. I swear, I have never heard a fascist speak like that since Hitler.
Yes, master.
Mussolini. That guy, I cannot believe he is a major leader of the European Union.
No. This is what the media has been keeping from us all this time. This was probably always out there, but
I felt a great disturbance in the force.
where would you go to see that? You think they're going to run that on Fox News?
No, they're not.
I mean, it's only going to happen on independent media that we're able to pick that up and scale it.
So he's pointing out here in the next one even some more details, but the point is he's made the European Union pay for, some of them pay more for, and then buy weapons from us. He started that on his first tour. After his first tour, he told everybody, we are no longer your, I don't know what you'd call it, what they call it, the arm of war. We are no longer going to be your person that you send to fight your wars. You can buy weapons from us. We'll give you advice. But what you need to do is have peace. And how are you going to get peace? Economies. Economies drive peace. If you want war to drive peace, you're wrong, because Trump says he's not playing that game. He'll sell weapons to anybody.
No, war is a lazy man's way of keeping the economy going, because these people aren't creative, so they can't create things. What they can do is destroy things. And so then their war economy keeps going. Okay, next tweet. Germany pays 1% slowly of GDP towards NATO, while we pay 4% of a much larger GDP. Does anybody believe that makes sense? We protect Europe, which is good, at great financial loss, and then get unfairly clobbered on trade. Change is coming. Love that exclamation point.
Now, mind you, our 4% doesn't count all of our commitments and all the bases that protect Europe and all around the world. And Germany has never paid, and he says, he puts in parentheses slowly, because he had to arm wrestle them. He had to twist their arm to make them pay hardly anything. And now he's trying to make them come up to the same standards we are. But nowhere in any agreement does anybody pay what we pay. And that's at the UN, that's in the International Monetary Fund, that's in everything. We pay the most. That's got to stop. He's already stopped that with the UN. Every time there's some horrible thing found out about the UN, he has an excuse. He just 50%, boom, not paying them anymore. And a few instances, 100%. We're not paying a dime to that group anymore. Look at the crimes they're committing in the name of the United Nations. And have you heard him put any emphasis on anything with the United Nations? No, it's going to go. So NATO's going to go. Just like TPP couldn't come into existence, TIPP couldn't come into existence underneath a lawful administration like Trump. Iran deal cannot exist. It is not a lawful deal. the money that Obama, even back to Clinton, $4.5 billion given to North Korea, an unlawful deal. Show me anywhere that that's lawful. The letting China into the World Trade Organization and becoming most favored nation in trading status by Bill Clinton. Show me where that's legal. The Chinese were killing 20 million Tibetans, just taking them out of their monasteries and killing them at the same time that they received most favored nation trading status and entered the World Trade Organization. And now they're entering into the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and they think that they're going to play a game of a war of currencies, that they can stand against America, who owns 93% of the world currency, and they think that they're going to stand and fight with us because they think capitalism is some kind of game. Look at North Korea. Look at China. If it wasn't for what we've done for China in the recent past, not only with these fantastic donations we have given to China through Taiwan and through their manufacturing, but also through the IP. Trillions of dollars in intellectual property has been stolen from China because they said, hey, we'll manufacture your stuff for us, but you got to show us how you made it. And then they steal it, and then they put their bugs in it. They put their mechanical engines in it, in every microchip, in every semiconductor. You can't trust anything from China. So when it comes to trade, we know that with China, those who are awake. But when it comes to trade with European Union, it's the same darn thing.
Only worse, because they've been pretending that they're our friends.
Precisely.
And that's what makes it so hard. And again, we always point out, we're not talking about the good people and citizens, patriots on the ground trying to fight the same kind of globalism we all are around the world, which leads to the next tweet, which is, great to be in Singapore, excitement in the air. Now, what he did not include in this are all the amazing videos that I am seeing coming around the world. People are just fed up. They see what globalism is. They see who the enemies really are. And it's not these countries of people warring against each other. It's the globalists and the military-industrial complex that's doing all of this. Trump was coming in, his caravan, you could see people lined up with signs, and they were all excited about Trump being there. Well, goodness, of course everyone's excited, because think about this peace. There are families that are split up in Korea. Some are on the south, some are in the north. This reconciliation can bring families together. Is there anything else that could be more important in the world than this? Love and peace?
It's a perfect example of all those things you just said, and the fact that all previous attempts at anything between North and South Korea was ran by soy boy beta males who are senior executive service members who never had the power to sit down and say, get rid of all your nuclear weapons. I'm going to walk out of the room and get myself a Big Mac, and when I come back, they have to be all destroyed or we're not going on. They blew them up before Trump got there. They've already made peace with South Korea before he got there. Unprecedented that they crossed borders. They met at the border. They've already done the deal, South Korea. It's a done deal. And guess who's not participating? China, because China is getting ripped off for the rare earth minerals from North Korea that they always were exploiting. And now, because the experimentation in those very mountains went nuclear bad, blew up the facilities, that's the reason Little Kim is coming to the table, not because of anything else. And why was he working so hard? To try to get Donald Trump to give him money, like he got every other president from America and from Russia to give him money every time he and his dad said they were going to blow up the world. They just poured money into the country, just like Obama did in Iran.
Well, this is going to be, Kim Jong-un has probably never really negotiated anything because he's a dictator. He tells you what's going to happen. And he is going to meet the master of the art of the deal, the master negotiator. Tell me how long that meeting is going to last.
The meeting's already done. What did Trump say? He'll know within, seconds.
Yeah.
I can tell you it's already done. It was done before they got there. Why? Because if you are a dictator who you make people believe that you are divine and everything you do is divine, or else you put them in jail, you kill them, including your own relatives,
You mean like
including
the
your
Queen
own.
of Elizabeth? That's what she does. She's got Julian Assange in a dungeon. You could call it the Ecuadorian embassy, but she jails her people. Terry Robinson. Oh, I'm sorry, I digress.
Did you forget that monarchs cannot be questioned?
Well,
What is your problem?
I know
Monarchs cannot be
They cannot
questioned.
question them there in England right now, but Betsy and Thomas can question them.
So Kim is beyond a monarch. He is like, the Sun King. He is divine, according to him. Everything he does is divine. And so he already told everyone what is going to happen at this meeting. He's already done it. He's made every concession because he says it's his idea. That's the only way a divine totalitarian dictator can work.
But it's going to be okay because it
beautiful.
will bring prosperity to him and his country. And if it makes him look good with his countrymen, great. But they're going to be more prosperous because Americans are going to need elsewhere to go for manufacturing once we leave China. And China. They thought that they held all the cards, but they have never played capitalism before. And there's a problem when you own someone's debt. If you own all their debt and they say, I'm going to go bankrupt, you're stuck with it. China's going to be stuck with it.
They're stuck with, you're right. That's why China's going to go down economically, because they're playing capitalism, as other countries, as for instance, Japan did not too many decades ago. They tried to play capitalism as we rebuilt them after the war. And what happened? Oh, for a while they looked like they were going to win over us in capitalism. And then what happened? They fell back to fourth place. So China is going to go through the same thing. And their attempts at capitalism are vicious, they're mean, they're totalitarian, they're worse than some forms of communism that we've even seen. So what's happening? Why do you think China sent that plane to help Kim? Because he couldn't get any plane in his country, didn't have enough fuel to get there without refilling. He would have had to stop in China or other places, and he's afraid not only of being shot out of the air because he's a crazy, paranoid, totalitarian dictator, but China sent him a plane. That plane was more bugged than any plane in history. They wanted to know everything going on. And what did Kim have to do? He had to go see Xi, the totalitarian dictator of China, before he could meet with Trump. Hello? It's all decided. They're going to do whatever it takes. And now China could have an open door to North Korea to use as it quickly, in a matter of a blink of an eye, catches up to the manufacturing speed of South Korea. And they're going to be doing that. Why? Because that's what China does. It subsumes. And so it will, just like Taiwan, it will subsume. So what's happening here are huge trade deals that if the trade deals go right, the military deals and the wars actually stop because you stop the friggin' financing. Trump knows who finances these wars. He is the great disruptor. He has disrupted everything. The Bilderbergers sent a cardinal from the Vatican. Their Secretary of State from the Vatican came to the Bilderberger.
I read a lot of different things. What is your take on that, Thomas?
Since Trump came on the scene, the Trilaterals, the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, all of them.
I want to talk about the Pope.
They're all freaked out.
Good, yeah.
And so they come to these meetings, they go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? He was there to represent the Knights of Malta because why? Pope Francis, the crazy Jesuit who has basically turned over every single doctrine and dogma in the Catholic Church and declared that Jesus Christ is the same as Muhammad and Buddha, the same being, and basically defiled everything that he has looked at or thought to look at.
When are the Catholics going to rise up against this false pope?
He overtook the Jesuits and put his own lieutenant there who was responsible, he and those two, responsible for many deaths in South America and basically all kinds of problems I'm not going to go into. But then he took over the Knights of Malta. Francis, the Pope, took over the Knights of Malta, put his person there, and now sends a representative from the Vatican, basically the one representing money, to the Bilderberger because nobody knows what they're going to do with Trump. All they know is that if they can get 5G in place, none of us will be able to think, and then maybe their plan can go forward. And where was 5G constructed to take over America? Singapore. What is Singapore? A British colony that took over that entire part of the world. That was the home of the British East India Company, folks. Singapore, let me repeat that. Singapore is the home of the British East India Company, which is the founding warlord corporation that has led us to this very day and to the messes we're in. It is by no accident that it's being held there and not somewhere else. Now, we can go into that, but the point is you have to take the East into consideration. If you don't take Russia, the East, and China, who's their best friends now, because of why? Turkmenistan, oil, Uzbekistan, all the different satellite countries around Russia, they're still controlled by Russia. So in Kazakhstan, where the greatest oil is, China now gets, I believe, 1/3 of that oil. Without that, it couldn't do what it's doing in attempting to become a modern capitalized nation run by a totalitarian dictator who is equally as bad as Little Kim. Little Kim can be held in check. China, they actually believe that stuff of the one belt, one road. They're going to take over the world, and you all better just bow down.
If we're going to have time for Susan Rice, we need to be more tight here.
You said Susan Rice?
Right, not yet. Okay, the next one is, sorry, we cannot let our friends or enemies take advantage of us on trade anymore. We must put the American worker first.
Period.
Period.
And by the way, what don't you understand about that, y'all?
Well,
anybody who wants to go into a trade negotiation that doesn't understand that, doesn't, like Kudlow came on, he basically said, well, this is just stabbing in the back. Trudeau is just a child. He's a blump, blump, blump. What did he say? My President Trump. That's how he refers to him. My President Trump. And how does Trump refer to America? We the people's America. It is America that he works for. He's not working for himself. First president in so long.
Right.
I can't even remember how far back it goes that we did.
But our job is to support him as he gets through all of this, because the more that we support him, because the mainstream media certainly isn't doing it, the more he can full steam go ahead and get this stuff done. So the final tweet is, thank you, Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong. And then there is a short little video clip, a little feel-good piece.
It was pretty. And, the Prime Minister of this business hub of the universe was thrilled to have Trump come there. Are you kidding? They cleaned out all the scum of the city, arrested him. That place can be secured. But mind you, who do you think does their business there? China. Do you really think that there's a single hotel room in Singapore that isn't bugged? You'd be mistaken to think so. But anyway, it's interesting we haven't heard any leaks. We haven't heard anything good. The press has reported almost nothing because they have the ability in the Far East to simply black out mainstream media's caca.
Okay, that's great. Now, let's move on to one of our favorite subjects.
Susan Rice, the new propaganda minister of Netflix. Why did they take it over? Why did Barry and Michael take over Netflix? Because it has the largest audience, folks. That's what the media does.
No, it's more than that. Netflix is that way. That the reason that you can let everybody share off of yours is because they want you to watch it. They are a piece of this propaganda arm. And when you look at The Crown, that little puff piece that's going on with Queen Elizabeth, come on, how much more propaganda do you need? So that's what they are. That's why they have a big audience.
And they know propaganda. Susan Rice is the queen of propaganda. Remember, they made her the ambassador of all of Africa, and during her time as ambassador, she made sure that 4.5 million Africans were murdered. She was responsible for starving them. She was responsible for arming them, killing each other. She was responsible for fomenting the dissent between the three nations around Sudan until the oil in South Sudan became a separate nation so that U.S. corporations could take advantage of it. She's responsible for Libya. We came, we saw, we killed. They stole $40 billion worth of cash and untold amounts of gold. That's why they went into Libya. Then they took the weapons and sold them again to Syria, Hillary Clinton. That's what the ambassador died over. So that was all under Susan Rice, the unmasker. All under Susan Rice, who said she had never unmasked. And then weeks later said she unmasked whoever she wants, and you better not ask her again or she'll poke you in the eye. It's her job, and that's the way she does it. And to this moment, she comes out and has the audacity to say Trump shouldn't allow Russia, who under her watch and Obama's watch, the Crimea had a referendum and voted to go with Russia instead of Ukraine. No one contested that. Why is that a crime? Why did they get kicked out of the G8 because of that? It was always their port. Ukraine always had a massive deal for Sebastopol and the port there for their... Come on, that's stupid. The Crimea it's also their number one recreation place. Why? And that's where all of the big top oligarchs go and all the big Russians go there. So why would they give up Crimea when they voted in a referendum? And in Donbass, it shows that Russia never, since World War II, has not encroached upon anybody. They took Crimea through a referendum. Donbass and the other part of Ukraine that's under debate, that's a different story. Susan Rice in Africa to make sure that she could control the entire thing and literally moved entire countries against the nations that she wanted, including Somalia, Sudan, Congo, Zaire, allowed the horrible research, the medical research to go on there, allowed Bill Gates and his eugenics projects to go in and to use it as an experimentation model. It was basically a laboratory for vaccines that could sterilize people. We now know this. All that was under her watch. When you look at the crimes in Africa, that is Susan Rice, and now she's going to run the biggest propaganda machine in the world, Netflix, along with the two people that she also controlled when they were in the White House,
well,
along with Valerie Jarrett, who controlled all of them.
At least we know. Well, no, we know that they all fall flat on their face because they couldn't even get all that election rigging going to get Hillary elected. So they're not going to be able to launch anything off of Netflix. But in the meantime, patriots, drop your Netflix account. Maybe not forever. But right now, it's the thing you do during war. You stop watching their propaganda media in all forms and fashion. Okay, I want to ask you one more question as we leave. What is this about Mitt Romney? I thought that horse was dead. And here he is. I saw that he didn't win the Utah primary, their GOP convention, whatever they call it. And so there has to be a runoff, and that runoff comes at the end of June. And then there's the election. What is Mitt Romney doing? Don't these people in Utah understand how corrupt he is? If there is a poster boy for a globalist, it is Mitt Romney.
Absolutely. And I love what you did with Truth News Headlines and posting all the previous articles and all those articles showing what a corrupt guy this is. If you want to get me started on Mitt Romney, I'll go, but I'll just say a few things. And that's that he was stomped on publicly.
Yeah.
When he had to do it publicly, no one wanted him. But they said at that moment, and I said, I sure hope it doesn't happen, that if he literally went and under the table paid off certain people in their party headquarters, he could still make it onto the ballot. Now they're speaking as if he already has won.
Yeah.
Not only made it onto the ballot, though he couldn't make it into the primary, not only didn't win the primary, but he is going to now be Trump's counterpoint. They're already speaking of him as the hero going to Washington to fight against Trump. He went and he paid people off. We had heard this could happen. I didn't know that this type of state party politics could happen, that you literally just have to go put money in people's pockets.
And listen, it's fully, people know that Romney's niece, Ronna Romney Daniels, is the GOP head. How stupid do they think we're out here? She's obviously set up there. She's going to do an end run for Romney and cause us all kinds of problems with him trying to oppose Trump at every turn. Of course, Trump will squash him like a bug, but I just am disgusted that the people of Utah, the good people of Utah, won't put that dog down.
Well, and look what he did. And this is how he paid him. He went around and went to every single county in the state in his old car, by himself, to go to meet with each politician in every single county.
He probably has blackmail on all of them.
He had cash in his trunk.
Okay.
He personally had to go there and put it in their pockets. We were talking about the most obvious corruption that anyone could ever imagine, except for Velmet Bank and Bain Capital. Oh, that's right. When George Bush Sr. and the Vulcans, when they brought down the USSR, they did it through George Soros and Lee Wanta, but they did it through a bank called Velmet Bank. And its subsidiary here in America was Bain Capital. And, of course, Romney was there taking out all the laundered money out of the USSR when we collapsed their economy. He is as corrupt as anyone could possibly be. He is a Bush. He might as well be a blood brother to the Bushes and to the Bush family, and he absolutely was involved with 911. He is as corrupt as can be. He has more money than you can shake a stick at. He never disclosed how much money he had or where his money came from for his campaign. And right at the end, they disclosed that he had these dressage horses that were in the World Olympics. You know, these horses cost $3.5 million to $5 million a piece, and these were just, fun little things that he was doing on the side. He is as corrupt as the Bushes. He cannot be allowed to get into any political position unless you want the highest levels of corruption to come back to Washington, because when Daddy Bush dies, Mitt Romney will be the leader of that group, along with Dick Cheney, because Brzezinski has died, and James Baker III, I believe, is still alive. But they are the leaders of that group. They are the Vulcans who became the neocons. They are what we call the rogue White House CIA that works out of Azerbaijan, that supplies weapons all over the world, and Mitt Romney is still involved in all of that. I mean, I thought everyone knew. We put out intelligence report after intelligence report showing it was so easy to show his corruption because the trail is so huge. So please, don't vote for him. Listen to what Betsy says and make sure that this dirty dog doesn't reach the swamp.
Trump had to come out earlier, and support Mitt Romney. And it was not a big, strong support. But of course he does. He's got that Rona Romney niece there at the GOP and, some other things. So, of course, he says, yeah, he'll be better than the next guy. But I'm just saying, we have to stop this, people. We have to stop voting in these corrupt globalists. And the good people of Utah, please find out what you can do in your state to stop Mitt Romney.